would give us a thought or an invocation, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. But welcome to those who have joined us on Zoom and also to those who are in attendance with us this evening. We appreciate your diligence in joining us this evening and most other evenings. So with that, John, it's your choice. You can proceed with a thought, prayer, and then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. So here's the thought I put a lot of thought into. The thought is, it's a quote from Edward Everett Hale, who I don't know who that is, but just for help. It says, coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. And I think that really works in the public sphere a lot because so oftentimes people show up in this room for different reasons. And from what I've seen in my time at the city, there's people typically leave feeling that there was some progress and some success. Occasionally there's a few people who are upset, but I think that usually they feel heard, they feel responded to. And even if they do leave angry, I know that the council and, other staff members have reached out and followed up and turned even some of those negative feelings into positive ones. So that's my thought, is that government is kind of a labor of love where you get to work together with people who have differing opinions, hopefully to grow, hopefully to progress, and ultimately to have some success. So that's my thought. Follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Call. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Call. I appreciate that. I'd like to excuse Councilmember Barker. He is at some training for the fire department down south. Councilmember Severing had another commitment tonight, and JD has joined us online. So we do have a quorum available this evening. At this point in time, council, is there any conflicts of interest or disclosures that would like to be made? I didn't see Councilmember Dalpaz raise his hand, so we'll consider doesn't have a conflict. We'll move on to item number 2, which is a discussion or action to amend ordinance 2024-20, which is correcting the boundary description as reflected on the approved plat map. City Recorder, Ryan, would you like that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So it was discovered that there was a little small discrepancy between the boundary description that was printed on the ordinance that was passed by the city council and what was printed on the plat. I worked with the city engineer to ensure which one was correct, and it was the one on the plat. So that has just been added to the ordinance. And in order to send that on to the Lieutenant Governor's office to get it certified and for the annexation to be finalized, we needed it to be corrected. So.
Since we're amending that ordinance, John, do we need a roll call vote?
Yes, it would be roll call. Oh, no, it's, yeah, let's do it as roll call. Yeah, that's a good catch, Mayor.
Good. Well, do we have a motion to amend the boundary description?
I just had a question first. Was it just a number? I couldn't really tell.
Yes, it was just a number.
It was off by feet or inches, not miles.
I didn't include another section that we didn't know about. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
Mayor, a motion to accept the amendment to ordinance 2024-20 that was correcting the boundary description as reflected on the approved plat map.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Watson. Any further discussion? All right, we'll have a roll call vote then. Councilmember Dalpaz?
Yes.
For some reason, we can't hear him, John.
I'm a yes. Can you hear me?
Working.
Yes.
Okay, now we can. Councilmember Dalpaz?
I am a yes.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pulver.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. We'll now move forward on public comments. If there's anyone online who would like to comment or anyone here at the meeting in person. John, anyone online? I don't see anyone here rushing up to the podium. So move on to item number 4, which is the primary reason for our meeting tonight, so these businesses can file with the state. Tonight, we're seeking an action to approve the beer licenses. They're basically recertifications. I don't think there's any new licenses here. So these are recertifications that includes Lee's Marketplace, Maverick, Smith's Marketplace, Walgreens, and 7-Eleven. There is one entity in the city who has a beer license currently, but is not on the list. Guess we'll see if they submit prior to the next meeting. So with that, we'll hear from our Administrative Services Manager, Mr. Bryce Nelson.
Hello, council and mayor. Yep, we're just looking for approval for the every 3 years they have to recertify. Every year they renew their business license. Every 3 years we make them go through the whole process of background checks and get everything done. So it's that time. Yeah, I apologize for the meeting, but I'm glad we can get this resolved. So do you have any questions?
So are you certifying that all the background necessary paperwork was completed and these are
Yes.
all qualifying?
Yep. So there's one we're still waiting on. There's one background check we're waiting on. The rest have been done. If there were any problems, they did go to the chief of police who approved them, and they are all ready to go with the exception of one that is on the list. We're still waiting for one more document for that one, but we have everything except for the background check in.
So Mr. Call, do you feel comfortable approving one of these who's not complete in their process?
They're on our list. They're not on the list in front of us, but with the passing of the
Okay.
new ordinance, it will go into effect and then staff could approve that next one when they
Right,
get.
so I thought he said it was one that was on the list.
There is one on the list that we have not received their background check, but it is someone who's previously been on the list for several years. And me and Colleen felt like it would pass. She was supposed to get it today, but I didn't hear before I came over if she received it.
So to your point, Mayor, you could leave Smith's off of the list, assuming the ordinance passes, and then staff can approve it based on the new language in the ordinance that says, as long as it's not their initial reach out for a license, staff can just approve the renewals. Yeah.
Council, what's your take? You want to
What was
wait till it's completed?
what was the difference between what he just said, the two? If it's a renewal, then you can, and if it's not, then you can't.
Yeah, I think on a renewal every 3 years, they have to go through the entire process.
Yeah. So once a year, they have to just come in, sign their paperwork, and they're done, and it renews for the next year. That happens every year. Once every 3 years, they have to go through the whole process of background checks. They have to list every employee who will essentially touch the product and go through, all of the background check and everything. So that's where we're at in the process now.
One on this list where the background checks haven't been completed. So my question was to John, do we want to approve one of the beer licenses where the process has not been completed, or based upon the approval of a change in the ordinance tonight, staff can approve that once the background check is done? Because I don't know what we do if background check came back and it was not good.
Yeah.
We could just make a motion that all that are approved now or within the next week, all that finish their paperwork properly can be approved. I don't know.
I think I'd probably suggest just leaving Smith's off, and then I'm assuming you're gonna probably think about passing the ordinance. And then staff can just take care of it when their paperwork comes in.
What's the difference? So we have to wait for the ordinance. I thought we passed the.
The ordinance that's proposed would be that city council does not have to approve a renewal every license unless the police chief says there's been violations, then it would come to the council. But if it's just routine, then staff could approve that.
Can we delay this vote until we vote on the other thing?
Well, the problem is that's why we're having the meeting tonight, because
gotcha.
these have to be submitted timely to the state, because you can't sell beer unless you have a license in your hand.
Right, but what I'm saying is that can we skip 4, go to 5, and then come back to 4?
We could, if
I don't know. I mean, you said if we approve that, then we don't have to do 4.
but it's on the agenda tonight for action, so.
I'd feel comfortable having staff continue to make the approval as long as it's someone that's renewing.
Well, currently they can't do
Yeah,
that.
it'd be new. That's why we're doing 5.
I think I would recommend adopting or approving 4 with the elimination of Smiths from that list, knowing that Smiths will fall under the ordinance that'll be approved in 5. And if it's not, then Smiths will just have to come back on the 28th to get approved if the ordinance isn't passed. So.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions before we seek a motion? So the motion would be to approve Lee's Marketplace, Maverick, Walgreens, and 7-Eleven to approve their beer license recertification as presented by Bryce. Do we have such a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second to the motion?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
So
All
what's
right.
the other one that we're missing? Can we say that out loud or not?
I believe it's Hug Hess. Is it?
Hug Hess, yes.
Okay.
Have we received any paperwork at all? Have we reached out to them to,
Colleen has been in contact with them. She has, I believe, also been in contact with their distributor to talk about what the next step is if we do not get anything from them. Which would be to pull their product, which has happened before. Unfortunately, we've given them a lot of opportunities to come forward and get the necessary documents in, so.
okay, well, keep the council informed, or if they submitted it and if number 5 is approved. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, let's take a roll call vote. Councilmember Dalpaz,
Yes.
Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulver.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item number 5, which pertains to ordinance 2025-01. And John, if you'd like to lead us in that. I think there's 2 portions of it, basically. So if you'd like to proceed.
Yes, council. So there's 2 components of this. One is the one we just talked about where the renewals, even the 3-year renewals, don't need to come back to the council anymore unless the chief of police and the business license office have found a violation or otherwise think it needs to. And then the other one is this now also includes what's called a full service restaurant, which is an eating establishment, which also has a bar in it. The hiccup on or not the hiccup, but the clarification of a full service restaurant is the majority of their sales, their daily sales and annual sales still have to come from food. So it's not just a bar, it's a restaurant that includes a bar. Think of like your Red Lobster, your Olive Gardens, those type of things, Cheesecake Factories. And so it's not like a pub where they sell food, but it's a bar. So just so in case people have any questions, in that there were quite a few changes. This ordinance used to just be a beer ordinance, meaning the only thing we allowed was the sale of beer. Now with that, we had to include everywhere it said beer to alcoholic beverage. Councilman Pulver found a few spots on the draft version that showed where it had just said alcohol license instead of alcoholic beverage license. So we cleaned some of that up. And then he had a good question for the group on that, but we'll get that down to that as we go in. The important changes related to the new renewal are, it just talking about the fees again, saying it's $100 and then it's $25 for a renewal. And that if their license is denied, they still have to we still get to keep $25. We wouldn't keep the other 75 for a new one, just because there is some staff time that goes into that. Their licenses now expire on the same day as the state licenses. That way everything is just in sync, so that if the state pulls the license, we pull the license, or if we wouldn't pull it before the state would, unless there's a violation. In the past, we have had some businesses that had violations. They were dealt with and they weren't severe enough. Usually the state is the one who really takes the severity on it. But we haven't seen any in the last couple of years, meaning that the folks operating the distribution locations have been really good about carding people who come in, and making sure that they're only being sold to the people they should. The big thing is that obviously we talked about that the license will be renewed at the staff level, not the council level. For the businesses, and now the addition of a full service restaurant, there's a few provisions that have been tweaked to make it clear that it's not just beer that can be sold in the city, but all sorts of alcohol. Assuming someone's a facility is properly licensed. Council member Pulver brought up two good points. One here under section J of 4-2-13 is it technically still says it's unlawful for anyone to keep, store, possess, or suffer any person to keep, store, possess any liquor, as defined in the Utah Beverage or Alcoholic Beverage Control Act. Well, to have a full service restaurant, you have to be able to put vodka and things like that on the shelves. So we are recommending that this one be struck, section J, as you pass the ordinance. And then the question was brought up for the new section N that says, no person shall sell alcoholic beverage at any public dance hall, dance pavilion, or place where public dances are held, or in which the public is permitted to dance. So we either need to tell people to stop dancing in Lee's or change the ordinance. And I think the recommendation is we don't have the type of dance halls this originally contemplated. So the council could eliminate this. It's not going to change anything we're talking about. We don't currently have a restaurant application before us, or a beer retail place that distributes for on-premise beer that includes dancing. So we could take it out, and I don't see there's much use for it, in the sense that if we ever did get a restaurant that had a dance hall, most likely that would be carefully regulated by the owners to, if they have a reception center or something, that would be part of a license that technically they don't qualify for still. Sorry. The mayor knows more about this than anybody. The state has like 8 different types of licenses. A reception hall is one of those. We're not technically permitting reception halls, so we still wouldn't have a dance hall that has alcohol sold in it. So you could eliminate N, you could leave it in, totally up to the council. So staff is recommending eliminating J, in addition to the red lines you say, and on N, or it's totally up to the council what you'd like to do.
I think the important thing is that all these licenses are subject to the granting of the license by the state.
Mhm.
And as you know, they've changed the name to the Alcohol Beverage Services. It's no longer Alcohol Beverage Control.
Okay. I didn't see that, but that's a good thing, is that we will
They've changed the name. And you're right, the licenses that most likely would be sought after in the city. In fact, it requires food to be purchased to get alcohol. And so as long as it's subject to the license granted by the state, but it is Alcohol Beverage Services now. And
Okay.
they do have temporary licenses for certain gatherings where beer can be served. proposing that, but there is that type of license. It's good for like a day or two for qualifying events that have to meet requirements of the state.
When did they change the name of it?
A year or two ago. Maybe even longer. Used to be alcohol beverage control. But I believe it's now called the alcohol beverage services.
Well, as long as we've got the ability to name it appropriate, we can work through those details. Looks like they've got there's the Alcoholic Beverage Control Act and then the Alcohol Beverage Service Administrations Act. So anyways, I think council, if you're okay, then we can fix those references to say as defined under the we could do the title. We'll change them to just be the title 32B, and that should encompass all of it.
Yeah, I think most laws, John, you correct me, are passed by the state, and they use to administer the laws to make sure they're in compliance.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
So what questions do you have, council, for Mr. Call? Councilmember Watson?
So on J that we would eliminate, this says that we can't sell liquor in any place. I can't remember what it said.
It was the storage of liquor.
Oh, the storage of liquor.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there anyone who would be able to store it but not sell it? Like there's not really a need to keep that, because if you're selling liquor, you have to have a liquor license, and that would just be the eating established full service restaurants that we have approved, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, if you read this language very strictly, I'm going to zoom in because probably no one can see it. Someone could argue that you can't have alcohol in your house. And I don't think that was ever the intent. And so I think getting rid of J just makes a lot of sense, that because technically the state, any commercial individual has to have the appropriate state license to even store liquor in a commercial place.
Right.
So
Which covers us anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, so I think we can eliminate J safely, and I think we can eliminate N as well safely. It used to be P because we don't have any dance halls, and we're not talking about on-site. I forgot the name of it, but reception halls. Like we don't have any on-sites being asked for or permitted under our new ordinance.
Just curious, if someone wanted a liquor license that goes through the state, but would we be made aware?
Yes, thank you. That was one other thing, is any brand new license for beer or for beer distribution or a full service restaurant will come to the council for its initial granting still. So that way the council's aware of it, the public's aware of it, and then renewals would just go through staff.
Okay, great.
And just so you're probably aware, state has very strict licenses where these establishments can be certain distances from church to a certain distance from school. So it's still a very highly regulated situation.
And oh, okay. And that is a good thing to mention. O typically said no license to sell beer in any dance hall within 500 feet of a church or school. The Montessori school is very close to our commercial area. So I took that out, the idea being that the state regulations would come into play, and the distances for a full service restaurant are not the same as a bar. Like a bar or a pub, the distances are 500 feet, but think of having a Chili's on the old detention basin, probably not going to cause a lot of drunken elementary school children. So, and JD does have his hand raised, Mayor.
Councilmember Dalpas?
So I'm just trying to think this through. So for the last few years that I've been on the council, January timeframe, we usually get together and approve these. So is it so it's possible with the 3-year cycle that there might be some Januaries that the city council doesn't consider licenses, or will we almost always have something come up in January to consider?
under the new ordinance, the council will not see things in January ever unless there's been a violation of their, of the rules, in which case that group would come back to the council just to make sure the council's okay with what the type of violations have been and whether they've been extremely egregious or not. But from here on out, you normally wouldn't see it during the renewal period any alcoholic beverage licenses. They would only be for a new facility, new restaurant, new store, that kind of thing.
Does that answer your question, Councilmember Delpas?
Yes, thanks.
John, there are defined violations of severity by the state. I don't know if the council wants to, if there's the most severe violation where a license isn't revoked, if the council would like to see that, or they just want to leave it totally up to the chief.
That's a really good question. Under the provisions of our code, I'm going to find it here. If there's an emergency situation, the chief of police can revoke the license, and then it has to come to the council under our ordinance. In a non-emergency situation, and then the council makes a decision on whether to uphold the revocation or to reinstate it. In a non-emergency situation, it would come to the council for revocation. We'd put them on notice and they'd come, and it'd be like a little mini court hearing with you all as judges deciding whether to keep it or not. So
On what level of violation though, John?
it would be up to the chief to decide whether it was an emergency situation or not. On the non-emergency, those would typically be I think at the state, if they get the state does stings, right? So they'll send underage people in to buy alcohol. I think if they get hit twice, then they revoke the license. Does that sound right, Mayor?
I can't remember how many times. Alls I know is that the state has different levels they classify as violations. My only question is at what point, if any, does the council want to see it other than a revocation reinstatement? If they're fine with the chief doing it all, so be it. Just brought that up for the council's consideration. What other questions? JD, do you have other questions?
No.
Councilmember Watson, any further questions? Councilmember Pulver? Okay, then the motion would be to allow staff to approve beer licenses, city beer licenses, as stated in the ordinance, and also to allow, as licenses are granted by the state, the sale of alcoholic beverages according to the granting of the state license. Somebody like to make a motion? That would be ordinance number 2025-01. Councilmember Pulver?
Mayor, I'd like to motion that we approve ordinance 2025-1-01 with the two things, section J and N, as we discussed, to be deleted. And then also that staff will fix the name as defined by the state, whatever that is. That's it.
Okay, we have a second to Councilmember Pulver's motion.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Watson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Delpas?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pulver?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item number 6. If anyone would like to make a public comment, either online or here this evening, now would be the time. Please step up to the podium, state your name, and if you're a resident of North Ogden. And once again, please limit your comments to 5 minutes. I am not seeing any public comments. Any comments from staff? Ryan? Bryce? Mr. Call?
No, thank you for taking care of this, council. This is going to work great for our businesses.
Okay, council, any comments you'd like to bring up this evening?
Just apologize to John for spamming him for all the actions that I've forgotten about, but anyway.
It's always good to have a second set of eyes. Councilmember Dowpaz?
I just had one quick thing. Just wanted to announce that Representative Ryan Wilcox is holding a public safety town hall tomorrow, Wednesday, January 22nd, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. He has invited Sheriff Ryan Arbon, who's the Weber County Sheriff. Chief Brian Einen from North Ogden Police Department will be there as well. And then Lieutenant Justin Cheney from the Utah Highway Patrol will be there. So just wanted to make everyone aware that will be at the Public Safety Building tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. for anyone interested in attending. I don't have a lot of information, but it seems like it's a good opportunity to ask questions of these local law enforcement officials.
And that's here in this building
Yes.
for the public safety building. Okay, thank you. I have no comments, so I'd seek a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, council.